So just a quick word on the upcoming Voice to Parliament referendum. So Australia in the 1980s virtually had no lobbyists. And a lobbyist is someone who actively tries to influence political decisions on behalf of an individual or an organisation. There are lobbyists for the pharmaceutical industry, for fossil fuels, for gaming, for transport, for halal meats, for robot enthusiasts. We virtually had none of these in the 1980s. We now have around 5,000. It's become a multi-billion-dollar industry that shapes our democracy every single day. In fact, if you go to the Australian government website, you'll see that lobbyists can help individuals and organisations to communicate their views on matters of public importance to the Australian government. Effectively, it's an advisory group. Effectively, it's a voice to Parliament. What's interesting is that Australia has some of the weakest regulations in the world around lobbying. It's not independently policed. We virtually don't know who's lobbying who, what they're lobbying for. These voices to Parliament remain largely anonymous, and yet they're influencing our democracy every single day. So the question is, are we happy to give this largely anonymous voice to 70 pharmaceutical companies, to the mining sector, to the fossil fuel industry, huge food companies, and yet we're not willing to give a constitutionally recognised voice to the real human beings who have lived here for at least 60,000 years? Real human beings that have innate wisdom and knowledge that can help us at a time when our landscapes are degrading at an alarming rate. The other thing is that we're being played in a way that we've never been played before. There is an active weapon of mass distraction going on that is deliberately polluting this campaign. It's a tactic that was used before the American elections in 2015 or 2016. It was used in Brexit, and now it's come to our shores. And it's no accident, because it's actually been coordinated by very similar people. There's a large global network called Atlas. They are free market libertarians. They have 500 organisations in 100 different countries, and they don't believe in any sort of government regulation. They have worked actively. In fact, they're one of the #1 climate deniers of the last few decades. They also worked actively against tobacco regulations. They tried to position smokers as a disadvantaged minority. They're funded by the Koch brothers, by Exxon, these types of people. In the late 1970s, they came and set up in Australia. They set up a group called the Centre for Independent Studies, funded by grants from Shell, from Rio Tinto, from BHP, from the Murdoch family. And in the last decade, they've actively putting op-ed pieces in different publications that are developing this idea of Aboriginal terrorism, that Aboriginals are going to come back and want to reclaim their land. This is even some of the rhetoric that's been used by people that are doing the door knocking in the No campaign. They've been told to use this fear. We saw John Howard do it in the late 1990s when we were debating around native title.
This shows 78% of the land mass of Australia coloured brown on this map. Now, the Labor Party and the Democrats are effectively saying that the Aboriginal people of Australia should have the potential right of veto over further development of 78% of the land mass of Australia.
But if you go to the Centre for Independent Studies website, part of the Atlas network, you'll see that they promote two prominent Indigenous voices. One is Warren Mundine and the other is Jacinta Price. Is it little wonder that Jacinta has been telling us that colonisation has had no ill effect on Indigenous culture? Are these people, Warren and Jacinta, actually being used to represent Indigenous culture, or are they actually being used to represent the views of the Atlas network, of the mining and the fossil fuel interests? And I only say this because there is a precedent for this. The Atlas network did something very similar in Canada when they managed to defeat a push for First Nations rights to protect the profits from their oil sands. And they did this by using prominent Indigenous figures, which they said created a shield against their opponents. Now, I know there are people out there voting no for a variety of reasons. I have friends, good friends, that are voting no, especially Indigenous friends, saying, why would we want to hitch ourselves to your system when your system's actively been decimating our own culture for 250 years? And I completely respect that. But while we have this system, I cannot choose to live in a country that says yes and gives a voice, an anonymous voice, to huge corporate interest while not giving a voice to the real human beings that have been here for so long. So if you are going to vote no, understand what you're saying yes to. You are saying yes to fear, you are saying yes to a distortion of our democracy, and you are saying yes to a very well-funded online campaign that is using division to control us and confuse us. If you don't know, just vote no. We are better than that. In 1967, the people of this country, 90% of the people of this country, voted to include Indigenous people in our constitution and recognise them as part of our population. The current vote now for this referendum is under 40%. I don't believe that we've lost that much decency in the last 56 years, but I do believe that our information space has been polluted, it has been hijacked, and it is blinding us from the decency that we actually all possess. So this is our chance to say yes to these people that have been here for so long and say yes to decency once again.